Hello, my name is Ben Pyle. I am the co-founder of Climate Debate UK and I am the Together Cabinet Chair for Net Zero. Last week, the European Court of Human Rights judged that the Swiss government had failed to respect 4 older women's rights to a family and private life because the government did not have in place a policy for reaching its commitments to the Paris Climate Agreement. The number of heatwaves in some Swiss cities has increased in recent years, and this has apparently made these older women, who suffer from a number of chronic conditions, feel uncomfortable when going to the shops or swimming pool at midday, and when it is hot, they felt less like socialising, and so they stayed at home. The ECHR has ruled that this is a breach of the complainant's human rights, and so the Swiss government must immediately enact policies to reduce emissions. This may seem like a ridiculous decision in a far-off court affecting another country, and it certainly is ridiculous. Even if the Swiss government had already reached net zero, it would have made no difference to the complainants or to the weather in Switzerland. The problem is that terms like human rights and climate change do not have precise meanings, but are increasingly the concepts that policies are built on. The ECHR was established to protect people from government overreach and tyranny, such as detention without trial, police brutality, and things of that kind. But since then, the definition and interpretation of these concepts has broadened. The meaning of climate change has expanded beyond all recognition too, as the case demonstrates. It now includes health, not just weather, even though there is no evidence of a link between weather and health. The ECHR won't hear arguments that climate policies will cause far more harm to human rights, for example by increasing the cost of living, limiting people's freedoms, and causing loss of income, all of which will have serious consequences for people's health. And it won't hear that despite the small increase in hot days, elderly Swiss women are living significantly longer, healthier and wealthier lives. And it won't hear these arguments because even if critics of climate alarmism of this kind were to be granted standing in cases heard by the ECHR, it is unlikely that they would be able to afford it. Litigation is extremely expensive and is therefore only available to the wealthiest people. These women were not funding their own litigation. The case heard by the ECHR was funded by Greenpeace and by other parties that fund nearly the entire green movement with billions of pounds each year. The Green Movement has discovered that it is much easier to bypass democratic processes using courts than it is to persuade voters to support far-reaching and draconian policies. The Green lobby spends millions on trying to use courts to force governments to create laws that the public has expressed no interest in. And now a precedent has been set, and the ECHR could just as easily rule the same for any one of the 42 countries whose governments have agreed to be bound by the ECHR, including the UK. And it is that precedent that campaigning organisations are hoping to exploit to accelerate the UK's climate policy agenda using people as puppets in their climate lawfare campaigns, no matter what the public think. But there is a solution to this problem, even if we cannot afford to go to court or are not allowed to present our case. We still have ways to make our voices heard. There is currently a petition to repeal the Climate Change Act on the Parliament's petition website. It is unlikely, of course, that just one petition will cause the government and Parliament to reverse course. But the more that MPs hear that the public do not want these policies, the more they will struggle to defend their position. In the last year, there has been a sea change in the public discussion about climate change, and there is now much more scepticism in the media, in line with the growing recognition that net zero policies are unlikely to succeed. And now the government and even the opposition have both begun to water down, if not U-turn, on their net zero policies, such as the banning of petrol and diesel cars and the banning of gas boilers. Labour have even rolled back their £28 billion a year net zero budget. And everywhere, LTNs and clean air zones are being dismantled due to public pressure. The government has withdrawn financial support for local authorities that want to impose these measures on towns and cities that do not want them. That is the direct result of pressure from the public and groups like Together on the government and on politicians and MPs. And now the ECHR's decision has made politicians realise that they're going to have to decide whether to do what the voter wants or let themselves be driven by green billionaires via puppet show courts into conflict with the public. We need to keep that pressure up, and we need to take every opportunity to explain to the government and to MPs and old and new parties that decisions must be made by us, not by fake green civil society organisations, not think tanks, not remote courts, and not dodgy, self-serving billionaires. Together, we can change the political agenda and put democracy back at the centre of policy making. Thank you very much.